When I went to the monument and then into the cemetery is where it was most affecting to me.
Mm-hmm.
My husband could never say why he didn't want to visit Manzanar, but when I felt the emotion there, I knew why. You know, he was feeling the pain and the sorrow, not for himself, but for his mom and dad.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Yeah. And how old was he when he was there?
I think he must have been uh, maybe about 10 years old. I don't know. He was born in 1931, August of 1931. For children, uh, it can be fun because they have lots of playmates.
Yes.
And
Mm-hmm.
I know that for the women, life became easier for them because they worked so hard. They were expected to work in the fields and then also do house things. I remember my father saying how angry he was and that he would never again vote, and he never did.
Wow. He just never voted again.
No, no, after
Wow.
the internment, he never voted again.
Oh my. So Grace, can we start with like the background of what where you guys were before the war broke out and what your parents were doing?
My mom and dad farmed, and my memory is that we lived in North Hollywood. See, I was born in 1936, and I think I must have been about 5 or 6. Now, after Pearl Harbor, there were blackouts, and uh, there were shades and thick curtains over the windows. And then my father decided that he would take us to Utah, and that was far enough inland where we were not considered a threat. I
Yeah.
still remember when we left the house, and it still affects me.
Um, what do you remember about leaving?
I was looking out the back window of the car, and our dog was standing in the doorway, driveway, watching us go.
So you had a dog. Did you have a neighbor that took the
Yes,
dog?
yes, and then my mom, uh, got letters that our dog would go back to look for us.
That's so heartbreaking.
Yes, still. I remember the drive, well, of course, at nighttime, being so dark. And, of course, we would have to stop by the road to pee. And, of course, that's when another car would come by.
Of course it is. Yeah.
In Utah, there were already some Japanese families there. My
Wow.
father raised sugar beets, and it was considered a war staple, so he was exempted from the draft. I remember during harvest, prisoners, German prisoners of war would be brought to the farm, and I had never before seen such tall white people.
Oh
They were so
wow.
pale, and my I remember my father telling my mother to make coffee for them, and they were very grateful for the kindness.
So they were brought to farm as well on the sugar beet farms, the German war
Yes,
prisoners. Okay.
um, I don't know about the other farms, but I know that they were brought to our farm, and
Hmm. How and you were really young at the time, so you saw all this because you were people just kind of walking around where you lived? Did you go with your father to see the
No,
farm or?
I think our house was on the farmland, uh, and we were not welcome in Utah either. When the hunting season started, there were signs in stores where people could get a hunting license, and there was a sign that said, hunting licenses for Japs too.
Mm, wow.
And one of the workers on my dad's farm, who was also a good friend, I remember that a bullet hit his boot while he was in the field.
Wow.
And
How scary. Do you remember your parents maybe did they ever speak about feeling afraid or even, years
no,
later? No.
I don't remember their saying anything. They may have, but I never heard it. I remember we had a coal stove, and
Yeah, the weather must have been one of the harder things to get used to, right? It gets so cold and
yes,
yeah.
um, I remember walking in pastures and seeing these huge thunderheads. And they were so white and the sky was so blue that I always thought that God was up there.
Hmm. Yeah, and what did you do for fun? Like how did you play while you were living there? And did you go to school?
Yes, I still remember one boy in particular who was a bully, and remember that I told a lie so that I could be accepted. Uh, I said that I had an uncle who was uh, killed serving America, but that was a lie.
Wow. When you said that, um, did you find that people changed their attitude towards you, or did it
Not
help?
a whole lot. I think it gave them pause. But if they went home and talked to their parents, they would have known. I'm assuming that I was lying.
Yeah. So the reason why your family went to and it's Clearfield, is that correct?
Yes.
Was that because your dad or parents knew people that were already going, or did he hear about the sugar beet opportunity?
No. No, it was just to not be interned. At least that's my memory.
Okay.
After the war was over, my mom and us kids were the last to leave the house. But my mother had forgotten something, so we went back, and I guess we'd only been gone a few minutes. And when we came back, our ratty neighbor was already pulling the fence down.
Wow.
Ah,
Just
Parker, that was their last name.
hmm.
I'm
Wow.
surprised I remember that. My maternal grandparents went to Denver, Colorado. They went further inland, and we did. We were able to go visit them. I think at least once. And on the visit that I remember is where my brother was on the floor. The kids were in the back, and he was on the floor, and to raise himself up from the floor, he grabbed the door handle of the car. It swung open, and he fell out. And as he fell, the door, I guess, bounced back and cut him on the side of his head. and it was so hard to find a an ER that would take him. And doctors, there were doctors that wouldn't take him. And finally, my father and my uncle, who was driving, they were able to find a doctor.
Oh my God. So you had to, they had to keep driving around the city to find somebody.
Yes.
Oh my God.
But, that's just how it was, and you cope with it and try to work through it.
Mm-hmm. So after everything was done and your father, when do you remember him telling you his his I won't vote anymore, him saying that, or was that when you were older and he revealed that to you, or how did
No, I remember. I don't remember now how old I was when I heard him say that. But other than that, he never talked about it. And neither did my mother. And after, my grandparents never talked about it either on both sides. They just didn't.